Good evening and welcome everyone to the Council meeting on the 15th of November 2022, which I now declare open. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to members of the public gallery who have joined us tonight, as well as those watching from home on the internet. As well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that their presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones be switched to silent mode during the meeting. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respect to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. We now move to item 2 on the agenda, apologies and leave of absence. Councillors, I note that Councillor Sypek is on an approved leave of absence for tonight's meeting, and I've received an apology from Councillor Bedio for the meeting tonight as well. Item 3 is confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and seconder that the minutes from the Council meeting held on Tuesday, the 25th of October 2022 and the Council meeting of 27 October 2022 be confirmed? Councillors, do I have a mover? Moved Councillor Byrne. Seconder? Seconded Councillor Hodgson. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 4 on the agenda is declarations of conflicts of interest. Does any councillor have a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to declare a material conflict of interest for item 9.6, and written notice with reasons has been provided to the CEO in accordance with Governance Rule 2.2.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Are there other conflicts of interest tonight? No? Thank you. Item 5 is presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations tonight? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd just like to say a few words about Transgender Awareness Week, if I may. The week before Transgender Day of Remembrance on November 20th, people and organisations around the country participate in Transgender Awareness Week to help raise the visibility of transgender people and address issues faced by members of the community. Transgender Awareness Week is a week when transgender people and their allies take action by educating the public about who transgender people are, sharing stories and experiences, and advancing advocacy around the issues of prejudice, discrimination, and violence that affect the transgender community. All members of the transgender community in Moonee Valley are welcomed and loved and supported. And just a final word to MQ, I hope you know how proud Dad and I are of you, and we hope you find through life abundant acceptance and love. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Are there any other presentations? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to make a presentation. I know that Councillor Bedio is not here, but it's in regards to Councillor Bedio and his role as Deputy Mayor from last year. That's okay. So at the statutory meeting last Thursday, my understanding was that after we exchanged gifts, we would then be saying speeches specifically in regards to the role as Mayor and Deputy. However, that didn't happen. And so I just want to say a few words now, if that was okay.
Absolutely.
So Councillor Bedio and I worked really closely as a Mayor and Deputy Mayor team over the past 12 months, and obviously had lots of laughs along the way, which was great. We did lots of joint speeches, which was something a bit different, and obviously Councillor Bedio stepped in for me when there was a clashing of schedules, which was also really appreciated. We met with lots of MPs and advisors and worked really hard on the advocacy side of things, in which we have obviously seen the fruit of now in the election time. One of my favourite things that we did together was meeting with businesses along some of our big shopping strips, including Napier Street and Keilor Road. Some of those had some really good outcomes, including the umbrellas that you've seen on Keilor Road and also the odd parklet and skiplet. Councillor Bedio obviously runs his own businesses and has some knowledge in that space that that was really beneficial for me to work alongside him, because it was definitely a strength of his and something that I haven't done as much of, and his knowledge of the planning enforcement was definitely also a great asset to have as a Deputy Mayor. Yes, so I thoroughly enjoyed working with him as a Deputy Mayor over the past 12 months, and I look forward. I wish he was here and I could say it now, but I'm sure when he comes back in we will have lots of laughs about freezes and double chins going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Are there any other presentations? I've got a quick one just to acknowledge the life of Robert Smith, who was intimately involved in the Airport West Footy Club for many years. Myself, Councillor Byrne and Councillor Sypek attended a funeral on the 4th of November at Hyatt Place Events. It was a really touching ceremony celebrating the life of a really huge personality of Airport West and the huge things that he's done for the community. And I want to acknowledge as well Tani, Carly, Mitch and Laura, the family members who it was really great to celebrate Rob's life and see such a huge attendance for such a stalwart of the community. Thank you. Councillor Byrne, did you have another presentation?
I did. Thank you, Mayor. This is just an update in regards to an advocacy trip that was endorsed through the Chamber that Councillor Adams and Councillor Nation and I went on the 26th of October 2022. So the three of us headed up there for a day trip to Canberra to advocate for funds to go towards Windy Hill, which was really exciting. In attendance were the three of us, Natalie Wood, who is the Essendon Footy Club AFLW head coach, and Kate O'Sullivan, who is the Essendon Football Club director, and Brenton Humphries, who's the Chief Strategy Officer. We had some really productive meetings with Bill Shorten, Annika Wells, advisor, Richard Miles, who popped in for a short period of time, and his advisors, and also Senator Raf Siccione's advisor. So it was good in a day to be able to squeeze in meetings. We still don't have an outcome from that yet, but I think that by planting the seeds, hopefully sometimes something may come to fruition for the advocacy that we've been doing in the Windy Hill space. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Are there any other presentations? No? And now we're on to item 6, petitions and joint letters. Councillors, do we have any petitions or joint letters? No. Now we move on to item 7, public question time. And we've received 4 pre-submitted questions this evening. For any submitter who is present tonight, please note that after reading your question, which will be answered, we won't be able to facilitate, our governance rules don't facilitate follow-up questions, and officers have prepared responses based on what you have submitted. So question 1 is from William Roberts, who has joined us in the gallery this evening. I invite William to read his question up at the podium. Thanks.
Thank you and good evening. I go under the name of Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
I think Bill's probably more appropriate these days than William. I'm no stranger to the council. I was here in November 2019 over the same issue. I have a property in Susan Court, and there was a redevelopment on the adjoining property, and that's not an issue. The issue is I had a colour-bond fence, and I installed that colour-bond fence because the property next door, the fence, some vines was getting into the fence and the palings were falling off the fence. So I approached the neighbour. They didn't want to replace the fence, so I replaced the fence and I put it on my property. Now it's about 50 mil in from where the existing fence line was. And that was all fine until the council approved for the redevelopment of the property. In doing so, they authorised the developer to remove my fence, which really wasn't a fence. It was put there as a feature wall to my property. I have a photograph here of, and as you will see here, that's the fence during the
Bill.
time of the construction.
Thank you for that, and I'm sure we can follow up afterwards. Do you have your question that you submitted to us?
Yes, I would like the council to have my fence reinstated, please.
Yep. Great. All right. Well, look, I'll refer to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond to your question that you've submitted. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Through the Mayor, planning permit NV/968/2014 authorised the construction of 2 dwellings at 16 Susan Court, East Keilor. When the application was assessed, the architectural plans specified the northern and southern boundary fence as being 1.5 to 1.7 metres in height. In order to ensure compliance with the overlooking requirements of the planning scheme, Condition 12 of the permit prescribed the following requirement. Prior to the issue of an occupancy permit, a timber paling fence of a minimum 1.8 metres in height must be erected on the northern and southern boundaries. The cost of such fencing must be met by the owner and carried out to the satisfaction of the responsible authority. Officers attended the site on a number of occasions to inspect the overall development and noted new paling fencing that had been erected along the common boundaries, albeit incomplete. The latest inspections have revealed plinth boards along the northern boundary have now also been completed to fill the gaps at the lower parts of the fence, satisfying the permit condition. Please note that should an alternative fence material now be pursued, this would need to occur in consultation between neighbours and separate from council. For more information on disputes associated with shared boundary fencing, please visit the website for the Dispute Settlement Centre of Victoria at www.disputes.vic.gov.au. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. And Bill, thanks for your question. I'm more than happy to follow up with you after the meeting if you give your contact information to our staff, but I won't hold you up till the end of our meeting because we've got a pretty full agenda. Thank you.
Can I ask a second question?
No, sorry. Sorry about that. All right, question 2 is from Marianne to Will, who I understand is not in our public gallery tonight, so I will read her question in her words. Marianne asks, is there a functional complaints process within MVCC? The online complaints process provides no acknowledgement email or reference, and no apparent follow-up has occurred in several weeks. A drainage issue due to a storm drain being replaced by an insufficient water excess valve on a council laneway has led to multiple instances of water ingress and flooding of 20 plus centimetres on private property. All attempts to escalate for a resolution since May 2022 have led nowhere, with a culmination of multiple complaints being raised to council whereby no acknowledgement reference number or follow-up has been received. Note the first request relating to this issue was raised on the 31st of May 2022, item 220531-000150, and 3 subsequent requests since 221007, 000267, 220907, -000113, and 221027, -000156 on the 27th of October, amongst of host of other escalation emails to engineering and the online MVCC complaints process. I refer to our CEO, Helen Swee, to respond.
Thank you, Marianne. Through the Mayor, I can confirm that all complaints from the community are taken seriously at Council. A community member may raise a complaint, either verbal or written, via Council's website, over the telephone, in a letter or in person at the Civic Centre. Further information on Council's complaint handling process is provided at www.mvcc.vic.gov.au. With regard to this specific request, Council is aware of these drainage concerns, and officers are progressing the holistic network investigation and engagement with impacted residents. It should be noted that broader drainage network capacity reviews are often complex and take time, with any outcomes prioritized for delivery in the annual budget approval process. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Question 3 is from Airport West local Peter Robinson, who has advised he will not be in attendance to read out his question. So in Peter's words, he has asked, he's attended the East Keilor swimming pool on the weekend at midday. All 8 lanes of the outside pool were closed and only 2 lanes in the indoor 25-metre pool available for lap swimming. Obviously, the 2 lanes were overcrowded and dangerous to swim in. 4 lanes were set aside for a birthday party. No one was observed to enter this section. They were all eating cake in another section of the centre. Who is making these decisions, and is Council aware of this total misuse of Council infrastructure? I refer to CEO Helen Swee.
Thank you, Peter. Through the Mayor, we note your observation from a recent visit to the Keilor East Nature Centre and appreciate you bringing this to the attention of Council officers. We will continue to work with the facility management team to improve the future experience of the Moonee Valley community. The facility management team will review opportunities to consider the needs of the various users of the facility and implement changes to address the concerns which you raised with relation to overcrowding in the lap lanes, supervision and monitoring lane usage, and access to the outdoor pool for those wishing to utilize the area. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. Question 4 is from Christian Scaramuzzino, who has advised he will not be in attendance. And Christian asks, how is Moonee Valley Council leveraging financial support offered by the Victorian State Government for flood relief initiatives in the local area? I refer to the CEO to respond.
Thank you, Christian. Through the Mayor, Moonee Valley City Council is using all available funding support from the Victoria Government and Commonwealth for its response, relief and recovery efforts. With funding available through the Local Government Support Fund, National Disaster Recovery Funding Arrangements, and Victorian Government grants for community recovery officers, Moonee Valley City Council is using this funding to support community-led recovery and resilience initiatives and projects that will help the broader community. This funding is key to delivering Moonee Valley's flood recovery plan, which sets out how Council works across built, social, natural, and economic recovery environments. It is worth noting that government grants have specific criteria regarding what can and cannot be funded through those grants, and Council will comply with those funding conditions. Moonee Valley City Council is also helping community groups and sporting clubs access government grants to support the recovery efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. We now move on to item 8, reports from delegates. Are there any reports on council or responsibilities as delegates? No. We'll move now to section 9, reports, and 9.1 is 881 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon, Lot 1 on Title Plan 558717B, construction of a multi-storey building, use of the land for dwellings, a reduction in car parking requirements, and alteration of access to a road in Transport Zone 2. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move a refusal, please.
Yep.
That Council resolves to issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a permit in relation to planning permit application number MV/716/2022 2021 at 881 Mount Alexander Road, Essendon, Lot 1 on Title Plan 558717B, close brackets, for the construction of a multi-storey building in a Commercial 1 zone and design and development overlay DDO3, use of the land for dwellings, a reduction in car parking requirements and alteration of access to a road in a Transport Zone 2, subject to the following grounds. 1. The proposed building height, scale and massing fails to meet the overarching objective and strategies of clauses 15.01-1L in brackets urban design and 15.01-2S in brackets building design of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme and would result in an urban design outcome that fails to positively contribute to the local context and enhance the public realm. 2. The proposal fails to meet the design objectives and decision guidelines of Schedule 3 to the Clause 43.02 Design and Development Overlay in brackets DDO3 of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme and does not accord with the Mount Alexander Road Corridor Urban Design Guidelines 2010 and the Essendon Junction Activity Centre Structure Plan 2015 to 2035. 3. The proposal fails to provide sufficient car parking as required under Clause 52.06 in brackets car parking of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme and would exacerbate car parking problems in the surrounding area. 4. The proposal fails to satisfy the following standards contained within Clause 58 in brackets apartment developments of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme and does not achieve an acceptable outcome in terms of the following objectives. A. Clause 58.02-1 and in brackets urban context. B. Clause 58.03-5 in brackets landscaping, and C. Clause 58.04-1 in brackets building setback. 5. The proposal will cause adverse traffic impacts on the surrounding area which will be substantial and unreasonable. And 6. The proposed development is an overdevelopment of the land. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Adams, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. The site of 881 Mount Alexander Road is currently a post office and real estate agency. It is a prominent corner location situated in Essendon Junction and is a really important piece of the Essendon Junction precinct as it also adjoins the large parcel of VicTrack land behind it. Successive strategic planning documents developed by Council have highlighted this part of Essendon as presenting opportunities for development that can improve the functionality and character of the area. The site in question is a very prominent site in Essendon Junction, an important public space in the heart of Essendon. Getting this planning right will have consequences for the future amenity of the transport use and surrounding public realm. This application seeks planning approval for the construction of an 18-storey building comprising 2 retail premises and 100 dwellings, use of the land for dwellings, a reduction in car parking requirements and alteration of access to a road in a Transport Zone 2. The report argues that the proposal provides a suitable level of intensification for a site located within the area and that, subject to conditions, it balances overwhelming height in favour of net community benefit and sustainable development. In addition, the apartment sizes are large and the site is well positioned adjacent to the train station. However, the significantly excessive height at triple the preferred maximum height as specified in the DDO disregards the strategic intent for the site to such a degree that I'm not persuaded the community benefit measures presented are adequate. It is, of course, difficult to quantify the community benefit that would justify this height. However, while I acknowledge the negotiations that have taken place, I'm not satisfied the proposed benefits are enough to justify the visual prominence and impact of this development on the relatively small corner of the larger strategic site. While the strategic planning has focused on the VicTrack land around the site, of this application. The site in question tonight was included in the Essendon Junction structure plan as requiring a master plan or a development plan that would require guidance as to the careful development of the precinct. The structure plan is not an insignificant planning document. It was developed with the intention of guiding development of the area until 2035. This application does not take sufficient heed of this strategic work, nor does the proposal comply with the DD03 and Mount Alexander Road Corridor Urban Design Guidelines 2010. The DDO sets out very clear preferred maximum height of 21 metres or 6 stories. At 57 metres and 18 stories, this application triples this limit. While developed some time ago, the DDO continues as part of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme. When the application was advertised, 18 objections were received. The concerns raised related to neighbourhood character, site layout and building massing, overdevelopment, zoning, off-site amenity impacts, car parking and traffic impacts, pressure on infrastructure services, facilities, loss of existing post office and viability of the project. Many of these concerns have been captured in the motion to refuse that is before Council. The excessive height, scale, massing, visual bulk and inconsistency with the strategic documents are all mentioned. The refusal also refers to the adverse traffic impacts and insufficient parking as well as visitor parking. All of these concerns combined lead me to a view that the proposal cannot be supported in its current form. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I would suggest that probably everyone in Moonee Valley knows this site. Obviously, it's where the Eston Post Office is, right at Eston Station, opposite the tram junction or the tram stop, the major tram stop, and it's positioned at the end of the corner of Russell Street and Mount Alexander Road. For me, there's two main concerns that I have with this development. Firstly, just its sheer height. The DDO does refer to 6 stories, and I take into account that it would be, look, it's a prominent corner position. So understanding that, to go 18 stories, I'm just really concerned about how that will impact the area where it's positioned. It's going to be an extremely tall building on a relatively small parcel of land. Understanding it is in the commercial area and near the train line and all the rest of it, it's just a sheer height, and the proposed plans have the walls from ground floor up at boundary level. I note that there is a condition here to set the ground level back by 1 metre, which is positive, but just the sheer height for me is a major concern, and the entry and exit to the car park. For anyone who's actually driven into the Essendon Post Office car park, you take your life in your hands when you try and get in and out of that area, and I'm concerned about how that will work with over 100 odd apartments and the people living them going in and out on a daily basis, and the potential implications that may have for the surrounding, how the traffic works, in that entire area on that major roundabout. So they're my two big concerns, and no condition would help me alleviate those concerns. So hence I'm supportive of the refusal. And I guess I'll just have to see what other councillors think, but that's my reasoning. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Councillor Sharp. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Adams and Councillor Sharp, for your comments. I agree. I think there's no disputing that this site is a good candidate for development. It's in a really great position, but one that is so prominent that we do have to be really careful and cognizant of what a building height of quite this scale will do to the whole area, and what it might mean, you know, set in train for future development as well. I think, you know, as Councillor Adams has outlined, there were some really interesting and good outcomes through negotiation, and I think, like Councillor Sharp, though, any condition to imposed on this application to bring it into what I would consider acceptable, particularly around the height, would potentially be too onerous on the developer. So I consider that it would be better to issue a refusal to grant a permit and ask the developer to rethink the height to something more closely aligned with our planning for the area and our planning scheme. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, this is a challenging one because the height is definitely a lot larger than what is there, and Russell Street has a lot of developments that are pushing probably 10 or 12 stories. So this then becomes another 6 on top of that. So on sheer height, it is an extremely significant building. That said, Essendon Junction is a bit of a mess at the moment that does need a bit of investment and a little bit of rejuvenation, and it's something that all 3 ward councillors, when we probably very first met at the start of this term, Essendon Junction was something we did cite as needing a bit of an overhaul. So then the challenge becomes, how do you weigh up the fact that this is an extremely large building that will tower over the suburb, but it could be bloody good for the area in terms of the businesses, in terms of activation, in terms of providing smaller, more affordable housing right in the heart of Essendon. It could almost be one of those developments where rather than 0.3 saying it doesn't have enough cars, which would then ultimately create 0.5 traffic impacts, where you just take away most of the cars, because as is argued in many of our documents, that housing close to transport nodes, and there's 3 here, bus, tram and train, is where we should be discouraging developments providing car spaces and trying to get more people to use active modes of transport. So there's the challenge. My gut feeling is that given the strong officer's recommendation, even if it gets refused tonight, it will go to VCAT and potentially stay at 18 stories because of the fact it does match a lot of what we try to argue, are arguing for in council documents and MV 2040. I probably think, contrary to Councillor Hodgson, that if it is a refusal, the applicant will go back and start over again, because this was lodged back in 2021, and I think that if you're that far in as an applicant, you just roll the dice. I will foreshadow an alternative, which will be to look at granting, but stripping multiple stories off, a considerable number of stories off, to bring it to something I deem a reasonable height, should this not get up. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. And because you've foreshadowed another motion, any other councillor would like to speak? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll be supporting the refusal for this site. Look, there's something I really don't quite understand about the application and the way that it works in with the DDO and the structure plan. The structure plan marks up the whole VicTrack site, with this small portion of it as all of that area requiring a master plan. The DDO refers to precinct-specific guidelines, but it refers just to the VicTrack land. Now, it seems as though we've got the structure plan is really cognisant of the fact that this portion of land cannot really be divorced from this larger parcel of land. The DDO refers to that whole parcel of VicTrack land and says that that should be subject to a visual impact assessment. It says that it should be designed to accommodate a tram super stop within the road reserve. It says that it should be designed to retain adequate park and ride facilities, and that the whole redevelopment of that site should also take into consideration that 18 metres and above should be restricted to less than 60% of the site, 27 metres and above should be restricted to 40%. So we've got all these quite stringent requirements around what it's just called the VicTrack land, and specifies how development of that land has to work in conjunction with the development of the transport precinct. And then we've got this little parcel here that seems to escape all of this, I think more through poor wording in our planning scheme. But nevertheless, I think that we have to take real note of the way that if an 18-storey building on this particular site then makes all of these other precinct-specific guidelines, it undermines all of those. So there's no way we can treat this in isolation. And the DDO also very clearly sets out that the preferred maximum height for the area for a site, for this particular site, is 6 storeys, 21 metres. So there are some things within the planning scheme that I acknowledge probably make it a little bit difficult for the developer and the owner of this particular site to work in how to take all of these specifications and come up with something that's going to really transform the area in a way that makes sense. But I don't think that an 18-storey building on this tiny corner of a site that requires all of these other design and development overlay and master planning is going to work. So I support the refusal. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Byrne, you're the only councillor that hasn't spoken. Do you have anything to add?
I sort of feel like I probably should, just because everyone else had. I wasn't going to. I've really enjoyed listening to the debate across the table, because I think that this is one of those applications where there are a few different options in terms where you can go. I tend to agree with Councillor Nation. I think my preference probably would have been to try to reduce the number of stories, but in saying that, that's not what I'm voting for now. I'm voting for whether or not the motion before us is to refuse it or not. And so I will be supportive of this motion. I'm not necessarily supportive of all of the refusal points, but I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater just because of some of the things, but hey, the more the merrier, whatever. I think it was Councillor Nation mentioned, or Councillor Isa, just in regards to the car parking issue. It's on a very unusual spot in Essendon, and I think we need to be going towards, with these big developments, less cars going in and out of them in some of these really important, awkward spots right in the middle of trains, trams and buses. So I've got no issues with the reduction in car parking provided. In fact, I probably could have been persuaded to have more of a reduction. But anyway, that's where my thinking process is, voting on for what's in front of us today, so I'll support the refusal. Thanks, Councillor Adams.
Thanks, Councillor Byrne. Because Councillor Nation has foreshadowed another motion, I'll ask Councillor Adams whether she would like to respond with the right of reply. No? Thank you. I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Adams, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson. That is carried unanimously. On to item 9.2, 3 Kilburn Street, Strathmore, Lot 34, PS 001070. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move an alternative motion.
What is your motion?
That Council issues a notice of decision to refuse to grant a permit in relation to planning permit application number MV 169 2022, known as 3 Kilburn Street, Strathmore, Lot 34 on PS 001070, for the construction of 4 dwellings in accordance with the following grounds of refusal. Point 1, the proposal fails to meet the overarching objective and the strategies of clauses 15.01-5S, neighbourhood character, and 15.01-5L, neighbourhood character, of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme, and would result in a development that fails to appropriately respond and contribute to neighbourhood character. Point 2, the proposal fails to comply with the following provisions of Clause 55 of the Moonee Valley Planning Scheme: A, Clause 55.02-1, neighbourhood character objectives, and B, Clause 55.04-1, side and rear setbacks objective, and point 3, the proposal represents an overdevelopment of the site.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Can I just ask whether councillors are aware of the motion? It was distributed by email. Yep. And governance, is the motion the same as distributed? Yep. Great. Is there a seconder? Councillor Adams? Councillor Sharp?
Thank you, Mayor. So this proposal seeks to construct 4 triple-storey dwellings, each containing 4 bedrooms and double-car garages on a lot of 851 square metres in Kilburn Street, Strathmore. Now, Kilburn Street is located off Pascoe Road, and it's quite a bit of a hill down that street. Understanding the officer's report here, for me, my concern is purely the fact that 4 triple-storey dwellings on this size block in a neighbourhood which is, I understand it is undergoing change, but for me it is just an overdevelopment of the site. There are triple stories along that strip. I understand that, and other councillors might not agree with me, and that's fair enough, but for me, it's just a pure overdevelopment of the site, which then causes other issues such as overshadowing, overlooking, and setbacks are also an issue that fails to meet the objectives of side and rear setbacks. So I'm putting up this refusal because I think it will be I understand our neighbourhood character in certain areas is changing, and often there's more than one house built on a block, which is understandable, but 4 triple-storey is what I can't support at this location. I think it will be extremely detrimental to the neighbourhood character that exists in that little pocket, and no conditioning will be able to alleviate that, which is similar. So I'm putting up the refusal, so thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Adams?
Thanks, Mayor. I will be supporting this refusal. Thank you to Councillor Sharp for moving this, and I agree with your comments. The land size is only 851 square metres, and to have 4 triple-storey dwellings on a block of this size is just too many. The visual bulk and height will greatly affect the amenity of the surrounding neighbours and also the streetscape. For me, it's an overdevelopment with too many on the block, and I don't want to encourage that in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, I acknowledge that the design of these dwellings won't appeal to everyone. I'm not sure if it appeals to me, but the high compliance with the planning scheme, I think, means that we really are obliged to grant a permit regardless of any aesthetic misgivings. I also feel that the 4-bedroom dwellings do offer housing of a larger size, of which we don't see a lot of, because people are trying to squeeze on a large number of dwellings, and so they cut down on the bedroom sizes. So I'm actually really pleased to see dwellings that are 4 bedrooms I think the topography, the hill, does mean that they can get away with the triple storey. I think that the slope allows for that and compensates for any of the otherwise quite large visual bulk. So I will be not supporting the refusal, and I will just foreshadow the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Councillor Sharp, right of reply. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Adams, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson. All those against?
Sorry, my hand's up.
Oh, apologies. Councillor Nation. All those against? Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa. I declare that motion carried. Now on to item 9.3, St Columba's Planning Application Minister's Referral. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move that Council resolves to send the letter outlined in attachment 2 to the Minister for Planning in response to the referral for St Columba's College planning application with any necessary minor amendments.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
While Council is no longer the responsible authority for this, or no longer the planning decision maker for this school site, we are providing detailed feedback to the Minister, including that the building should be redesigned to retain the existing oak tree, that conditions to limit student and staff numbers should be included, and that a master plan be submitted to Council. Any neighbouring properties are encouraged to provide their feedback directly to DELP as soon as possible if they haven't already done so. And I've just added that little note about any minor editorial amendments being able to be made to the letter. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, as Councillor Isa's mentioned, we're not the responsible authority for this planning application, but have been invited to submit our feedback to the Planning Minister, to DELP, which is a really important step in the process because, you know, as we know, Council is very close to and understands the local community and the needs of the local community. So it's great, the work that the officers have put into this response. I think it's very appropriate that we are recommending the retention of one of the big canopy trees that's on the site, and hopefully that can be heard by the department and incorporated into any permit granted. The plans retain the existing parking on the site but underground it a little bit, so that doesn't, you know, there won't be any kind of flow-on effects into the surrounding streets from, you know, removal of those car parks. It's a reasonable design response, I think. You know, the calls for increased setbacks so that the landscaping has more opportunity for even more canopy trees to be planted is a good suggestion as well. And just in keeping with how we're managing the planning and growth for schools in the area, I think that the request for Council to retain some, you know, oversight and a partnership with the school on that plan for growth and growth of student numbers, which isn't a part of the application before the Planning Minister now. There is no request to increase student numbers, but I think it's just really important that we ensure that moving forward, Council remains a part of that conversation so that we can plan together for the growth of student numbers and schools in that area. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Nation. That motion is carried. Next item on the agenda is 9.4 Heritage Matters. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Hodgson.
Mayor, I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Mayor, this request comes to us, partly the officer's recommendation is to include 3 additional properties into the ongoing Moonee Valley Heritage Study 2020. The consultants that are working on that study identified that there were just 3 properties in between an existing heritage overlay and a proposed study area for the heritage study that were not included. And so for cohesion and completeness, they've suggested including those in the study, which is supported by officers and makes a lot of sense to me, so I'm supportive as well. The second part of the report steps through a few requests that were made when we passed our most recent planning scheme amendment around heritage, which was for additional information for those people who have properties in with a heritage overlay about some of the things that they can and can't do. So around how to manage fence colour restrictions and a few other questions, just making sure that those that are living under a heritage overlay have access to resources and information about how they can make changes to their house in the simplest way possible with no waiting time or undue costs. So the report details some answers to those questions and significantly it has resulted in some improvements on our website of accessibility of that information.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa? No? Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 9.5 is Community Carbon Emissions Reduction Task Force. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I've got an alternative motion to move.
What is your alternative?
That Council resolves to A, establish a Community Carbon Emissions Reduction Task Force using the deliberative panel model with recruitment to commence by 31st of December 2022. B, endorse the terms of reference for the Community Carbon Emissions Reduction Task Force outlined in attachment 2 of this report. C, fund the Community Carbon Emissions Reduction Task Force administration and operating costs of up to $50,000 in brackets ex-GST from the Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve, with additional costs referred to the 2023 mid-year financial review process as required. And D, request the Chief Executive Officer to ensure the organisation has the necessary operational resources, then in brackets e.g. a climate officer, for the effective delivery of council decisions regarding the expenditure of the Community Carbon Emissions Reduction Reserve, and refer this to the 22-23 mid-year financial review process.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Could you please read out point C again?
Fund the Community Carbon Emissions Reduction Task Force administration and operating costs of up to $50,000 in brackets ex-GST from the Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve, with additional costs referred to the 22-23 mid-year financial review process as required.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. Many scientists now think that the ambition of keeping global warming to less than 1.5 degrees is now unachievable. This bad forecast shouldn't deter us from action. In fact, it means harder, faster action is required. After many years of frustration, we have now almost $1 million, we've put almost $1 million in the past 2 budgets put towards reducing our community emissions in Moonee Valley, and this is a really big win. We've probably been a bit slower than needed in working out how to spend this money, but we have been working out some processes to combine engagement education, awareness and collaboration with community and participatory decision making, because we need everyone to be on board and be part of our project to reduce community carbon emissions in Moonee Valley. The task force we're establishing will bring together community members and council to work out how we can most effectively reduce our community emissions. We're trying to reduce the costs for this this alternative motion. The alternative motion is also trying to ensure that we have resources at council that are needed to effectively implement and deliver the expenditure of the reserve, so that we are absolutely doing our best to reduce our greenhouse emissions from community. The task force isn't a talk fest. It isn't delaying things intentionally. It is about 10 years too late, absolutely, but I am very hopeful that it will lead to the action that we need and will involve community in really positive discussions and engagement in that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Isa. Look, yes, it is, I believe, a really important step on our process, and it probably does, at the conclusion of this, leave us with no further excuses to get down to action. But this will be our second deliberative panel that we're delivering in this council term, and I think ever. The first being our community assembly to review our community vision and council plan for the 4-year term. And I'm really excited that this particular topic is the subject of this panel, because there's nothing more important in the expenditure of this reserve than having the community on board and doing this in partnership with the community. So to have a panel, a task force of community members to help us apportion the funds from the reserve that we have is, I think, the most appropriate course of action to take. And once we have the advice of the task force, then, as I say, that money, we'll have the evidence base, we'll have the community voice, and we'll just be able to start rolling out that reserve. So very supportive of this. There is an addition in there to fund part of the administration and to fund the operation and administrative costs from the task force, and there will be some in-kind support from council in terms of staff resources and things to make sure that we're delivering this task force in the most cost-effective way that we can, but not compromising on the outcome. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I will be supporting this motion. However, I've heard around the table that the view of, it being this task force will be made up of that community voice. And one of the things that doesn't sit quite well with me with the community voice is that you have to be over the age of 16 to be in this task force. And I acknowledge that there are particular reasons why that has to be the case and that things would have to be changed. But at the end of the day, we are talking about people who have contributed the least to the climate emergency that we're in, and they will be the most affected by the climate emergency, and they are not going to be on this task force. And council has to ensure that we continue to strive to ensure that our youth voice, the voice under 16, is heard. And whilst it may not be in this task force, I look forward to working with colleagues to ensure that voice isn't missed throughout this process. So I think that overall it will be a fantastic task force, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it comes up with. But I'm very mindful that, we do have to just continually just think of ways that we can incorporate that youth voice, in particularly when it comes to climate change and the climate emergency we're in. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Byrne. Any other councillor? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. If the original motion in our reports regarding point C relates to funding the Community Carbon Emissions Reduction Task Force task force administration and operating costs of up to $100,000, excluding GST from the Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve. So the alternative is to alter that $100,000 and amend that to read $50,000 with any additional costs referred to in the 22-23 mid-year financial review process. I do have concerns with that because we have already set the budget for this year, and obviously Council certainly doesn't have cash to splash around, and any when we've got money that could potentially be used out of this reserve, which is what it's intended to be used for, coming out of other budgets that haven't been allowed for, I do have concerns with that. 50,000, if I know with this panel, members will be paid, correct me if I'm wrong, but members will be paid. So if we have 45 odd members getting paid $300 each, that's $13,500. So $50,000 isn't really going to go too far, I wouldn't think. So I'm concerned about that. I'm also concerned about point D, which is requesting the Chief Executive Officer to ensure the organisation has the necessary operational resources, e.g. a climate officer. So the point D is actually requesting the Chief Executive Officer to appoint a climate officer, is how I'm reading that. And again, to refer that to the 22-23 mid-year financial review process. I'm not comfortable at all getting into operational matters regarding appointing staff, and that to me is how point D reads, so I won't be supporting this alternative.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Adams or Councillor Nation, do you have anything to add? Councillor Nation? Yeah.
Thanks, Mayor. Can I ask a point of clarification through the Chair to the CEO, if possible, in regards to the interpretation of point D? Does that mean, is the interpretation that point D is recommending the appointment of a new staff position, or to appoint someone within the organisation as a dedicated climate officer? Are we increasing the FTE? Is that your interpretation?
I'll refer to the CEO whether she feels comfortable answering that question.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Through the Mayor, my understanding of the point D, if carried, would be I need to ensure the organisation has necessary operational resource to deliver council decisions regarding community carbon emission expenditure. That means if I need additional resource, that will need to go through the 22-23 mid-year financial review process. So I take if I need a new position, it will be subject to the 22-23 mid-year financial review process. Thank you.
Councillor Nation, does that answer your question?
Partially. So in follow-up, the appointment, so you've indicated that the appointment, this may be the appointment of a new staff member. Does that mean at the mid-year financial review, councillors would vote on whether or not to create this position, this, or would it be advertised prior to the mid-year review? What would the process be?
If I need additional financial resources, which is beyond what is the council, the budget adopted by council for 22-23, yes. I don't expect council to approve the recruitment process because that's within my function as CEO. Thank you.
Councillor Nation, do you have any further questions?
No. Look, I will speak to it if I may.
Absolutely.
Yeah, look, point D, I just probably don't have enough information there to understand if, and even with those 2 points of clarification, if we are delving into staffing or if it, if it's creating a new position within the organisation, or if it is just allocating someone already on the staff to be climate officer and have that responsibility. I take it that there are staff who fill a very similar role now, so whether or not it is just the creation of the title, or if we are asking the CEO to create a new position. The latter I'm not comfortable with, the former more than happy with, and at this stage I just don't think I've got enough information, so I may ask that the motion is split for voting purposes if possible.
What I'll do, Councillor Nation, is I'll allow Councillor Isa to a right of reply, and then if you feel that you'd still like the motion split, then we can do that.
Thank you, I appreciate that. As for point C, look, I have issues spending any of the $700,000 we've put aside as councillors for a community carbon emissions reduction reserve on anything except that purpose. I don't want that money spent on venue and catering, as per the report. I don't want it spent paying external contractors to facilitate the task force. I don't even want that money to pay for people to be involved. My view is all of that should come out of operational, and that the $700,000 should be spent on the purpose for which it was created, and that was for projects that will reduce community carbon emissions. So I would much prefer that we take all the administration and operating costs from operational, and that community climate emissions reduction reserve stays at $700,000, so then the people on the deliberative panel that will come up with a range of excellent suggestions can allocate that full $700,000, because that's what we were going to do as councillors with that $700,000, is we were going to allocate that amount to projects, so people, the community having a say, shouldn't diminish that total amount, particularly when it's getting spent on venues and catering and external contractors. So my view would be keep the $700,000 and spend that for the purpose it was meant. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Adams, you're the only councillor who hasn't spoken. Thank you. Councillor Isa, right of reply.
Councillor Nation, could I just ask a point of clarification to Councillor Nation, Councillor Tyson?
Certainly.
Mayor. Did you wish to move an amendment?
I don't think, are you able to ask a point of clarification? I got told off for doing it. I don't think it can.
I'll ask you.
The mover of the motion.
Yeah, you aren't obligated to answer, Councillor Nation.
I am.
You aren't.
Oh, okay. No, as long as that's the process that we're allowed to ask each other points of clarifications. I was told off when I was even the mover of a motion. Yeah, happy to move an amendment. Absolutely. I'll just put the words together.
Thank you.
Ask for an adjournment to prepare a motion.
I'll adjourn for till 7:50. Thanks. Welcome back, and thank you for the public's patience while an alternative amendment was drafted, and I believe Councillor Nation had the call.
Thank you. Yes, I was going to move an amendment, please, Mayor.
Yep.
My amendment is to strike out Part C and replace it with a Part C that reads, fund the Community Carbon Emissions Reduction Task Force administration and operating costs of up to $45,000, excluding GST, from the Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve, and increase the Community Climate Emissions Reduction Reserve from $700,000 to $900,000, with additional costs referred to the 22/23 mid-year financial review process as requested.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Is there a seconder? Councillor Byrne. Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. So,
Apologies. Apologies. Governance. Thank you. Councillor Nation, can you just confirm that the amendment is correct on the screen?
yes, thank you.
Thank you. Apologies. Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. So, look, one of the issues that I've had with this task force is the fact that establishing the task force takes away from what the $700,000 was put aside for. To the extent that in the officer's report, it looks to spend $100,000 on how to spend the other $600,000. My percentages aren't great, but I think that's a considerable amount of what the $700,000 is. And in my opinion, when it was included in the budget, as previously mentioned at this meeting, I thought that $700,000 was going to be specifically spent on projects and measures to reduce community emissions, not on potentially venue hire and catering and external contractors. So through this amendment, what I've attempted to do is scale back some of the, what I would call extra costs in terms of running the task force. Now, through discussions with the CEO and executive just then in the break, I'm comfortable that through that reduction, it won't be taking away from the members of the task force being remunerated as they were to be under the officer's recommendation. It won't take away the ability to recruit a wide and diverse range of our community, noting that to ensure we get into all different corners of our municipality, you can't just chuck something online or chuck something in a letterbox. So I do appreciate that the engagement and recruitment part is really important to get the right people. I shouldn't say the right people, but a diverse range of people, the right people given the brief of this task force to be involved. What it does take out is the facilitation. I shouldn't say it takes out the facilitation, externals. It also absorbs some staff costs into the operational budget and the venue, running it here in council. It doesn't take away from things like catering, and it is important that task force members, as I said, are remunerated for their time and are made to feel comfortable enough that they are fully functioning for the entire day or days of the task force. That leaves us with a $45,000 shortfall, and I'm not comfortable with any of that $45,000 coming out of the reserve, but obviously the mid-year financial review is not till February, so if we were to strike that to nil, that then means the task force would have to wait until then. So the 45,000 is there to ensure the task force can proceed. I was then, through the second part of point C, thought, well, let's increase the reserve to get that $45,000 back. But I thought I'd be a little bit ambitious, and rather than raising it from $700,000, raise it from rather than raising it from $700,000 to $745,000, to bump it up to $900,000. And I want to justify that. Look, when I was supportive of the $700,000 amount, I was thinking, and maybe thinking incorrectly, that it may be councillors allocating the money. Now, if we're going to go to the effort of running this task force, getting a large number of our community together, then I would actually like to see that amount bumped up. And I think $900,000 is reasonable. It would be an extra $155,000 on top of just making up that $45,000 which the task force would spend. It will be referred to the financial mid-year review, and councillors, I seek your consideration for this amendment. It may not be successful, but I'd be interested in hearing people's arguments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Nation, for putting forward this amendment. I don't really see a downside to it. I think that there's more money going in to this particular reserve, and we'll be able to do more things, which is exciting. I think when the number was landed on at budget time in June last year, it was sort of put together from money that we sort of could take out of particular areas where we had money or leftover money and whatnot, and we've been successful in a few grants, so I'm sure that there's going to be some extra money that is available, and this is a really good place to put it. And I think that the community will be really excited, and I think that you make some valid points that if we're spending so much money on setting up the task force, if that's what we're deciding to do, then having some extra funds definitely can't hurt. So no, I'm supportive of this, and I think that it goes well within the substantive motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillors like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Nation. Look, to me, what this amendment does is really highlight how significant of a priority this is for our council. In the officers working with Councillor Nation on his amendment, and again also with the original reduction from 100 to 50, there was, I'm not going to put words in the mouth of our CEO and very capable engagement team, but obviously to make sure that the staffing resources and things can be absorbed means that the organisation will be prioritising this work. And if we're going to refer an additional $200,000 in the mid-year review process, that also means that as a councillor group, we'll have a motion that will be prioritising that review to allocate resources into this fund. So I'm supportive of this amendment for those reasons, because I think, maybe 10 years too late, but we want to make sure that everyone understands that this is a priority for our council to address the climate emergency. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak on the amendment? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, and thanks, Councillor Nation, for putting this forward. Look, one of the things that I do really value about our debate in the chamber is that we have the opportunity to continually amend and shape our thinking. And so I guess what I always try to do is, rather than put forward criticisms, if there's something I don't like about a motion, I try to amend it to make it better. And I guess that's what I was asking Councillor Nation for his feedback on. Councillor Nation made some criticisms about the initial motion, but I would really like his feedback, which is what he's done. He's put forward, he's turned his criticisms into some really constructive feedback, which is a great result. And I just, this is the debate that I think we can be really successful on in the chamber. This is how we can use our different thinking to improve the end result, which I think is what's happening here. The officers had put forward $100,000 from the task force to pay for from the reserve to pay for the task force. I had whittled that down to 50, and Councillor Nation has whittled it down further, which I'm very supportive of, and I thank you for that. And also, of course, very supportive of more money in the Community Reduction Fund. Happy to keep seeing those numbers rise. So thanks very much, and I'm glad that we've had this debate.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other councillor on the amendment? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in... Councillor Nation, I believe all councillors were in agreement, but I can give you 30 seconds if you'd like to respond. Yeah. So just to clarify, sorry, that right of reply is around if there's disagreement. Yeah.
I'm not going to vote for it, so Councillor Nation can have a right of reply if you like.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Right of reply, Councillor Nation.
So something was said that it did. If we would like to just discuss that, I was criticising the motion, and it was mentioned that I don't have the facts, and I just want to say, on record, I don't have the facts about a lot of things. I'm definitely not the most educated person here when it comes to climate emissions reductions, etc. It's got nothing to do with my work career, but it shouldn't prevent me from being engaged and involved in trying to shape what this council does, because I think a lot of the time most of us don't have facts on a lot of things. We're not planning experts, but we're in a position to make decisions on behalf of the people that elect us, and I think it will be beneficial for all of us as councillors to appreciate none of us are experts, well, some of us are experts in some things, but none of us are great experts, but we need to put our minds together, as limited as they may be with mine in some issues, and try to deliver some outcomes. So thank you for the ability to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Nation, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Sharp. I declare that amendment carried, and that forms the part of the substantial motion. I believe Councillor Isa, sorry, had the call.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, I was just about to close when we went to the amendment.
Please
so
continue.
I'll just wanted to respond to some comments that were made in the debate about the motion. And firstly, just to Councillor Byrne, appreciate the point about younger people's engagement, and certainly engagement with schools is probably one of the things that could come out of this. Obviously, the task force is making some very high-level decisions that, I guess, to reflect on some comments Councillor Nation has just made, that do involve searching for some scientific facts and some expertise around how the money can be spent. And so I guess that's one level of discussion, and then another really important discussion needs to be had with people who are inheriting our mistakes and the below 16s. And so I agree with you that finding those ways of having those discussions with people below 16 is something that we need to do as part of our reduction, our mission towards reduction. Councillor Sharp, I was going to just respond to some of the comments made about the use of the money, but we've dealt with that, so that's good. And then just the other comment that was made was around point D, and I'm comfortable. I've had lots of discussions with the CEO and am comfortable that we're not overstepping any of our territory into operational in the way that point D is phrased. It is really, and I think the CEO put it this way,
30 seconds, Councillor Isa.
Oh, sorry, I'll be quick. Put it this way herself, was that the motion is, it's asking the CEO to make sure that the organisation has the resources. How the CEO chooses to do that is the prerogative of the CEO, and we're not stepping into that territory at all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. And I believe, before I put that to the vote, Councillor Nation, would you still like to split the motion? Thank you. I will put the amended substantial motion to the vote. All those in favour? That is Councillor Adams, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Nation, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Sharp. I declare that motion carried. The next item is 9.6, Moonee Valley Technology Infrastructure. Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd just like to declare that I have a material conflict of interest in this item. Thanks.
Thank you. I invite you to leave the room. Councillors, do I have a motion? Sorry, councillors. Do I have a motion? Sorry, Councillor Nation. Yeah, are you requesting an adjournment? All right, I'll give a 5-minute break, returning at 8:25. And we've returned. Thank you for everyone's patience. So to recap, we're on item 9.6, Moonee Valley Technology Infrastructure. Councillor Isa has declared a conflict of interest. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Byrne.
I'll move the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. This is to award a contract to Logicalis Australia for the sum of just over $4 million, which is for 3 years plus extra 1 year, 7 1-year options after that, subject to the performance review of the contract. This is obviously something that we want to get right. In MV 2040, it says that we need to be technology ready, and if we're not, we're going to fall behind, and we've seen that with lots of other companies recently. It is something that we have to do. I don't think it's necessarily a sexy thing to be spending money on, but something that we absolutely need to do. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, just to add to Councillor Byrne's comments, as we know, data security is a very important thing, and making sure that our systems and servers are adequately backed up and looked after is really important. A really thorough process has been undertaken for this, including leveraging off the Municipal Association of Victoria telecommunications panel to identify the best provider that's offering us value for money. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Any other councillor? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. Look, so I understand that this is an extremely important project the council needs to undertake to update our archaic systems. So my one criticism is that we're spending a significant amount, $4.1, almost $4.2 million, on a tender that we only received one bid on. My preference would be, if we tender and there's only one bid, that just for the sake of ensuring we've done our due diligence, that we re-tender, just to ensure that they are the only company intending on tendering. Now, we can't do it now because this report's out in the public domain, but I would like to see in future tenders for something of this size, 10 years, potential 10 years, 3 plus 7 times 1, almost $4.2 million, that we don't have a tender period from the 14th of December 2021 to the 23rd of January. It's obviously something that could have waited because we're only deciding on it now in November 2022, but potentially we only receive one tender because we put it out 7 business days before Christmas and over the New Year period. So that is my hesitation in supporting this, noting that an alternative to re-tender is pointless because everything's now here published within the report. But on that basis of there only being one tenderer, and the fact it wasn't re-tendered and the quantum being so significant and the period being up to 10 years, I won't be supporting this report. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Nation. Would any other councillor like to speak? No. Councillor Byrne, right of reply.
Thanks, Mayor. I acknowledge what Councillor Nation says, but I can also see through the report that it did go through quite a process, even if there was only the one tender, and that the organisation was and the panel was happy with what the tenderer put forward. But I think that you definitely make points, and it's probably something to be mindful of this year and years going forward, of things that are just open over Christmas time. I'm sure there's some people who like to tender for things over Christmas. That wouldn't necessarily be me, Mayor, but and perhaps not necessarily in here. But anyway, moving on, I still think that it is something very important that we have to do, and that it is 3 years with the 7 one-year options. So there are obviously options. We don't necessarily have to do the whole 4 mil, but thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Adams, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Tyson. All those against? Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp. I declare that motion carried. And we'll just invite Councillor Isa to rejoin us. Thank you, Councillor Isa. We're on to report 9.7, response to notice of motion number 2021/26, speed limit review, Keilor Road. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an additional point E to read, receive a report back to Council by May 2023, providing options to improve direct active transport options connecting the Nidri and Airport West ends of Steel Creek.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Is every councillor aware of what the additional point is? Councillor Nation, yes. Yep. Councillor Sharp?
New point A.
Yep. Other councillors? Yep. Great. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. This report's come off the back of a notice of motion that you raised last year, so thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
I believe all ward councillors are acutely aware of what is deemed as an issue in our ward, which is the 40-kilometre zone that goes down Keilor Road, and I dare say most councillors would probably use this stretch of Keilor Road and probably have heard of some of the frustrations that people who use it regularly have. So this 40-kilometre zone needed to be reviewed, and I'm glad that the officers have done a really good job in doing a really thorough review. So thank you, CEO, to your team for taking this notice of motion and giving a lot of information in the report. It's come back really well, and I think it'll be really justifiable to the community why we are looking at some changes, which we wouldn't normally do. I think generally speaking, Council, we like the idea of reducing speed limits to be able to create a better environment for people to utilise active transport safely. And in this case, we're potentially going to be increasing the speed. But I think that what this report shows is that people are still speeding regularly anyway. Whilst it might be making it a little bit safer, most of the accidents are happening, the very few accidents are happening during school time, and that part we're not looking at changing. So what we are looking at doing is changing the 40 kilometres between Spring Street and the Avenue to 40 kilometres just during school time, but still maintaining the 40 kilometre speed between Spring Street and Woorite. So the bit closer to the school we'll maintain, but looking at potentially just having the 40 kilometres in that other section during school time. It is a very steep slope there that people go down, and the speeds that people are reaching are probably getting to the stage where people are spending more time looking at their speedos than they are on the road, and that's definitely not something that we want to encourage. I think we have a lot of work that we need to do in this space. I was lucky enough last year to spend a bit of time doing the Better Moves Around Schools work, and I think that this school is one that would benefit greatly from that work. Seem to be a lot of kids that get dropped off by their cars currently at the school, which is Pegs for people who were unaware of the area. And that's probably due to a lack of public transport options in the area. But one thing that we may be able to have be able to improve on, which comes into relation with my point E, is to receive a report back providing options to improve the direct active transport options connecting Nidri and Airport West ends of Steel Creek. One of the real issues for people who do come along Steel Creek is you're going along, it's all beautiful and natural habitat, and then bang, there's nowhere to go, and you've got to sort of go all the way up either side of the hill to then either cross over the freeway about 100 metres away, cross over and then come back down to the Steel Creek path. And that's not a good option. It's an option, but people just don't really want to do it. There are other areas apparently that use the drains to go through. Apparently that's potentially not a good option in this one, because whilst two are used well, my understanding is that for the overflow issues they need to have all four available. That's definitely not my area of expertise, but there's particular people in the area that have informed me of that. But I think that it's definitely worth having a good look into how we can possibly get from one creek to the other one. I've put in here in regards to active transport, but it'll be really good just to see what comes back in terms of increasing that corridor and making life just a bit easier for our walkers, runners, bike riders, scooters and anyone else who wants to be able to use it and connect both sides of the suburbs, which are only 100 or so metres away from each other. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne, and I'll just say as well thank you to local resident Danny for raising this issue with Council, and apologies for the delay in the report as well. Councillor Hodgson.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, Councillor Byrne's right. This is based on some really thorough traffic studies, and thanks to the officers for doing those. And I think the time spent on those is evidenced in how thorough it is. And we're making sure that we've got also the best period of time that we've done those studies. So, you know, school's back, everyone's behaving in our new COVID normal way. So it's also significant, I think, that the original speed limit change came in as part of a Better Moves Around School investigation and suggestion. It's fitting then that a point E is added as we go back and revise the change, you know, in the spirit of continuous improvement. We've had a look, it's been in operation since 2018, and we can now have a look at how it's working and make sure that we're updating so that the road users have the best deal possible. So if accidents are not occurring, you know, outside of the peak times as much, then there's, you know, no reason why on a very steep road we are disadvantaging drivers there in the part that's not near the school. So quite supportive of this adjustment as a way of just continuously reviewing what we've done and suggesting improvements, noting of course that this is subject to Department of Transport approval and community engagement processes. So this is a suggestion that we'd like to put forward as council, you know, having heard feedback from the residents, and it's quite telling, I think, that during those peak times, you know, the road users are probably a bit more conscientious of the risks to, you know, pedestrians and other road users, being probably mostly school parents doing the drop-off. So they're on the lookout, hopefully, for students who are also making their way to school. But yes, I think that this strikes a good balance, and I'm happy to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Nation.
Thanks, Mayor. And look, I will initially ask, you may ask again for the motion to be split, because I'm happy to support A, C, D and E, but I do hesitate increasing the speed limit anywhere in our municipality, and I really dislike 40-kilometre zones as a driver. Because you know what it makes me do? It makes me slow down to 40 kilometres an hour, not 50 kilometres an hour. And as some of our inner city neighbours are even putting in 30 kilometre an hour zones for high pedestrian areas, I'm just not overly comfortable removing a 40 kilometre zone or maintaining it only during school times, just because it's a somewhat inconvenience to drivers having to slow down that much. I also think that school times are an interesting thing as well, because we know now with year 11s and 12s going to exams, etc., that there's pedestrian traffic in and out of a school from about 7 a.m. onwards. So even those time windows probably don't even pick up the after-school sport that occurs at Essendon Grammar School. So, yeah, look, if we could split it, because I am supportive of A, C, A's, A, C, D and E, but I just think that increasing from 40 to 50 is not sending the right message as a council. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Nation, and I'll consider that before we go to vote. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa?
Sorry, I was just trying to pull up the map again to just clarify for myself where the proposed, where the Avenue and Spring Street, is that what it is? Avenue and Spring Street, sorry, and I've just, so I'll just talk while I try to pull it up. Look, I'm really familiar with this stretch. I will be driving it for one of the last times tomorrow when I drop off a child to their very last school exam. So I appreciate what Councillor Nation's saying about the need for safety, but I think that the investigations have preserved the safe school zone, and in the times also making sure that the 40 kilometres is during the school times. The stretch from Avenue between the stretch that's being proposed to just go back to 50 during the day is very different to the stretch that extends west from Spring Street. So from Spring Street, there really are quite a lot of kids who walk along that stretch of park, particularly because cars park in the car park there. The stretch between Spring Street and the Avenue, I'm very comfortable with it reverting to 50, except for the school times. The visibility is high, people aren't crossing the road onto the other side, there's nothing on the other side, there are very few pedestrians along there. People know that they're going to have to slow down. The difference between 40 and 50, really, when it's 40 kilometres, people are going at about 48 anyway. I don't think that this raises issues, and I'm happy to support it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? I will split the motion firstly to vote on A, C, D and E, and then secondly to vote on B. So for the first, is that acceptable to all councillors? Yep. So voting on that council resolves to A, C, D and E. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. And all those in favour of B? Councillor Adams, Councillor Byrne, Councillor Hodgson, Councillor Isa, Councillor Sharp, Councillor Tyson. All those against, Councillor Nation. I declare that carried and the full motion is carried. On to item report 9.8, Moonee Valley Community Advisory Panel Terms of Reference. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa moves the officer's recommendation and a seconder. Councillor Byrne. Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. This is one of the other opportunities for engagement that we are moving tonight. There are a few of them on the agenda, 3 in fact, and this is the second. This is going to be a really interesting process, and I know that the staff who have put together these engagement opportunities, I hope that they're really proud of what they're putting forward, because I'm really proud of what we're putting forward as a council in terms of opening up some discussion opportunities. So I really do want to commend the staff for their work on this and hope that our executive team can take back that feedback. Look, I can't wait to see people put up their hands to get involved in this and to see what comes back from it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you. I think that the line effective community engagement is central to the success of delivering a healthy city through MV 2040 pretty much just sums it all up for me. So I think that this is incredibly important and a good positive step forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak? Councillor Hodgson.
Just to quickly note, one of the what I believe to be really great parts of a deliberative panel is the broad reach that it seeks through its recruitment process and the remuneration that it offers, so that it's allowing people who might not always put their hand up in a volunteer capacity to be a part of some of these types of processes, gives them the opportunity and make sure that it's accessible to everyone through, making sure that time is remunerated. So again, looking forward to seeing how this deliberative panel goes and what we can learn from the community about the work that we're doing.
Thanks, Councillor Hodgson. Would any other councillor like to speak? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 9.9, multilingual reference group terms of reference. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Mayor, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with a small amendment to remove the word simple in point B. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Is there a seconder? Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Isa.
Oh, look, I'm very much looking forward to this group being established. Can't wait to see what sort of languages and what backgrounds we can collect together to provide us advice on how we can communicate in ways that really respect the multilingual diversity of our wonderful community. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Hodgson.
Not much more to add, Mayor. I think it's something that'll be really welcomed by a lot of members of our community, and as Councillor Isa said, I'm hoping that we can get a really broad representation and make sure that we've got some creative ideas on how we can improve the experience for members of the community in accessing council.
Thank you. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Item 9.10, submission to MAV Regional Groupings of Council Review. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Move the officer's recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. A seconder? Councillor Byrne. Councillor Isa.
Sorry. Thanks, Mayor. So the Municipal Association of Victoria has reduced the size of their board from 12 to 10 members, which then necessitates some rearranging of the regions. And this is an endorsement of a submission or authorisation for a submission on some different options for how those, where Moonee Valley is situated in those regions. And there are two possibilities for us. One is that we remain where we are with the Western region, but the officer's recommendation, which I have moved a motion in support of, is that we join with the inner councils. They include Melbourne and then Darabin, Maribyrnong, Marybeck, Port Phillip and Yarra. Now, I do want to make sure that our Western colleagues know how much we love, and I have spoken with our Western representative from Melton, Kathy, Councillor Madjudik from Melton, and I'm sure that she and others know how much we have enjoyed the strong social connections with the other Western councils. And we really do thank them for the collegiate support and fun we've had in this MAV grouping. And it may be that we remain in the MAV grouping because our submission goes with many others to the MAV board, and they will decide in December what regions to have going forward. But I am supportive of the officer's recommendation because I do think that there is potential for greater advocacy wins through an alignment for us with the central and inner councils related specifically to the topics of advocacy that the MAV does really well, which include planning, waste, governance, council services and climate action. The outer Western councils tend to have a focus on growth and infrastructure, which we share to some extent, but that's not necessarily an advocacy area that MAV value adds to. It's those other areas of advocacy that are MAV's strengths and in which MAV plays a more effective role. Also in those complex state and local government relationships and the funding related to some of those agreements and regulation and services. And it's in these areas that our needs, I believe, more closely align with the central councils. And so I look forward to putting forward our submission to the board and seeing what decision they make in December.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. And I might just ask all councillors and staff just to check that their devices are on mute, as I have heard a few electronic sounds. Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I obviously represent or been elected into Rosehill Ward, which is the closest to the Western region councils, and I would say that even specifically from a Rosehill Ward perspective, that there are very little things that we really do overlap in with the Western region councils. That's not to say that the work that we've done with them hasn't been useful. I think that it's been great, but some of the big road advocacy items and whatnot, I do think we just naturally align better in with the inner city councils, and this is an opportunity for us to potentially go over into that space. I've been lucky enough over the years to obviously work with Western Region mayors and lead West and also M9, and I've noticed within the meetings that the similarities as we move in definitely seem to increase. In saying that, if it doesn't happen this way, I'm sure that we can still be very productive when we're grouped with the Western. I don't think they're just going to, flick us out because we are, I'm sure that they'll forgive us. We've all got great relationships with those representatives, and yes, but it'll be a big change, and obviously with the Essendon electorate now going into the northern metro side from a state level, that obviously does change things, that we're not just Western Metro either. So it will be interesting to see what happens, but I think that this is the officer's recommendation and it is the preferred option. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? I will put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. We're now on to item 9.11, informal meetings governance report. Councillors, do I have a motion? Councillor Sharp.
Mayor, could I please move the officer's recommendation with a slight amendment?
Sure. What is your amendment?
To add another point, we'll make that point 1 and add point 2. Review the attendance on the 5th of July and 19th of July of Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. I might just pause for 30 seconds. I won't adjourn the meeting, but I'll just ask governance. Thank you. Thanks for your motion, Councillor Sharp, and governance is just checking that I think I know what your intention is with that, just that it can be clarified. Is there a seconder? Councillor Nation? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, this is obviously a very procedural report, but in looking at it, there was 2 dates, 5th of July, 19th of July, where I was marked as absent. I don't believe that I was, however, I stand to be corrected, so that's why the extra point, just to review my attendance, and I've checked both of my phones and I have not had, I've not sent an apology through to the Mayor or the CEO, so, and I would have done that, absolutely, so, yeah, that's the reasoning behind it. Thank you.
Very diligent. Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Councillor Nation? Would any other councillor like to speak on the motion? No? I'll just pause for a second to receive advice from governance.
Sorry.
Well, apologies, Councillor Byrne.
Could I perhaps...
Councillor Byrne?
Perhaps if we just adjourn for one moment.
Certainly.
1
Happy
minute,
to
2
adjourn
minutes.
for 2 minutes to 9:01. Thanks. Thank you, and thanks everyone. I was just calling whether any other councillor would like to speak to the motion. No. I'll now put that to the vote. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously. We are now on to report 10, item 10 on the agenda, notices of motion. The next item of business is notice of motion, and we have two listed on tonight's agenda. However, one is confidential and will be heard in that section of the meeting. Item 10.1, I call on Councillor Byrne to present her notice of motion titled Notice of Motion number 2022/26, seeking advocacy commitments from Niddrie and Essendon state election candidates. Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move that Council resolves 1, to note that Moonee Valley City Council has achieved a strong advocacy outcome for our community and welcome recent announcements for A train station for Airport West announced by the Labor government, and B, a funding commitment of $17.5 million for an indoor stadium announced by the Liberal opposition, and 2, to write to relevant state election candidates for Niddrie and Essendon and seek their commitment to deliver both projects if elected.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconder, councillors? Councillor Adams? Councillor Byrne.
Thanks, Mayor. This notice of motion I've just raised just because there's a few questions that are being asked around the community, just in terms of what exactly both parties are offering up at the state election. These are by no means an exhaustive list of what is being promised, I should say, by the Labor and the Liberal Party or other parties. They are purely just two of the things that we have advocated for in our advocacy strategy, and that myself and Councillor Bedio sat in a lot of meetings advocating for over the past 12 months. I do suggest people to do their own research, obviously, in terms of what candidates are committing to. However, the reason why I've raised these two things, first of all, I'll start with the train station for Airport West, which is what we've been calling it. When it was announced by the Labor government, they called it Keilor East. I'm sure most people, as long as we get a train station, we don't really mind. The reason why this one has raised a few question marks is because in a Facebook post, there is a thought that the Liberal Party is potentially saying 2 stations, of which neither at this location and of which one isn't on the train line, which is obviously just a little bit different and not necessarily in our thinking. And I think that it would be really good just to clarify if that's actually a position or if it's a thought bubble. We've obviously spent a lot of time, and our office has done a lot of work in order to get the commitment from the Labor government, and I think our preferred option would be to have something that we know stacks up. If there's information that we don't know, then obviously that would also be good to see what it is. The second one we have was the funding commitment of $17.5 million for the indoor stadium that was announced by the Liberal opposition. Obviously it's very expensive to build an indoor stadium, and we are the only inner city municipality without one. It was a very exciting announcement at the time, a few weeks ago, by the Shadow Sport Minister, Cindy McLeish. There has been talk that there may be an announcement in regards to an indoor stadium by the Labor Party. I don't believe that has happened. In fact, I'm pretty sure that it hasn't, because I think that I would have been made aware of it. But it would be good just to confirm if they have an intention of funding up to $17.5 million, or whether they will say, well, we have the indoor stadium program, which depending on the year has been anywhere between $2 and $3 million. Again, just so the community can be, I suppose there's just confirmation to the community in terms of what the intention is in terms of helping us deliver something that our community really wants. I've left it, point 2 is to write to the relevant state election candidates for Niddrie and Essendon. I feel like that is broad enough to leave to your discretion in terms of knowing who would be a relevant state election candidate. I wasn't intending it to at the time of lodging this notice of motion, the people seeking election hadn't been finalised, so I wasn't sure whether there was going to end up being 100 names on the ballot. So I trust your instinct if this was to get up in terms of how the letters would be framed. This notice of motion isn't meant to be controversial. I think that our advocacy team has done a great job to be able to get what the train station has been one of the biggest commitments ever in terms of state infrastructure, and the $17.5 million, to my knowledge, is the biggest funding commitment to a council-built project we've ever had as well. So they're great outcomes, and it'll be really exciting if they get matched by both parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Adams.
Nothing further to add, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Adams. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously. I'll also note Councillor Byrne's advocacy, as well as Councillor Bedio's on these issues, and Councillor Nation, Councillor Sharp and Councillor Sypek in previous years as Mayor. The next item is urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business? No? We'll now move on to item 12, confidential reports. And we have one listed on the agenda this evening. 12.1, notice of motion number 2022/27, property matters. Item 12.2 is considered confidential under the terms of section 3(1) of the Local Government Act 2020, as it contains information relating to A, council business information, being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released. Councillors, if prematurely released, as it contains confidential contractual matters. Councillors, I need a motion that council resolves to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66(2) of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider items 12.1. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor Sharp, and a seconder? Councillor Adams. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. So this is where we say goodnight to the members of the public watching via live stream and those in the chamber. Thanks for your interest in tonight's meeting, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.